going live on YouTube. And then wait, how do I make you co-host instead of the host?
Oh, is there no such function?
Yeah, it's only host, no co-host. That's fine. It's just I just click on a button anyways. So all right. So everyone, if anyone else joins late, we will have the recording. We have the broadcast on YouTube, and then the recording we can put on the social media and stuff like that. We can also splice clips. So let's go ahead and get started. Try to keep the schedule going. And we appreciate everyone hopping on Zoom with us, especially because everyone who has just finished submitting, or hopefully you submit already. This whole event was here for you to start exploring your path into tech. For this talk, we're here to explore how you can develop your career and find success in your chosen domains. So with us today, we have Charis, who is a senior analyst at Wayfair in Boston, and Li, who's a senior research scientist at Amazon Web Services, AWS, in Seattle. And Charis and Li, thank you for joining us at HackDuke Online. So let's go ahead and get started. Charis, would you like to summarize your education and what you do for Wayfair?
Yep. Thanks, Scotty, and thanks, Joss. Thank you for inviting me. So hi, guys. Glad to meet you all. My name is Charis. I just graduated from Columbia University last year, and now I am a senior analyst working at Wayfair, mainly focused on all tech-related stuff on Wayfair's sales channel. To summarize, I just analyze and organize data to determine trends that can impact business decisions at Wayfair. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. And Li, what about you? Your education, what you do for AWS?
Sure. Well, hello there. My name is Li. And well, let me start by confessing that when I was in college, hackathons weren't even a thing. So you guys are lucky. And now that I've officially dated myself, we can get started. So I had my undergrad and a PhD in physics. That was many years ago. And I somehow just hopped here and there until I ended up in Amazon. One of the reasons I guess I got into tech was it was difficult to get a job as a physicist, like in the early 2000s and well, early 2010s. And but yeah, here I am. So as Scotty just mentioned, I'm a senior research scientist at Amazon. So my job responsibilities, by the way, I'm with the serverless department or organization within AWS. So I don't know if you guys have used Lambda. AWS Lambda, it's the serverless functions. I'm actually on the research science team there, and my job mainly involves, making the fleet work better, improve the utilization, and then reduce unnecessary waste, and then pass on the savings to customers and make us stay more competitive in the market. So that's that's what I do. Thanks.
All right. Thank you for that. So obviously there's always a starting point. So Charis, when did you decide to pursue tech?
Well, that's a good question. So I remember it was not until I graduated from Columbia University and start my very first job in the United States. I guess it's last year. Yeah.
All right, congrats on graduating so recently. For you, how has your journey evolved?
To be honest, I was not quite sure what career path I want to pursue at the very beginning, but I always keep an open mind to try anything I'm interested in and anything I haven't done before. My major at college is mathematics. Besides math class, I also took a lot of class like optimization, differential equation, programming, machine learning, and etc. So I remember it was the first time I realized I have interest in tech when I participate some career fairs and talk to some excellent people. So meanwhile, I spend some time to research and try to improve my domain knowledge about the world, about the society, and also about different industry. Besides, I try to have coffee chat with as many as professional I could. I connect people who work from different industry and ask how they feel about their job, what that industry looks like, and what is the most interesting thing and what's the most challenging thing at their work. After hearing so many stories, I start to think myself from both in and out. I learn about what personality I have, what are my strengths and weakness, what I'm really interested in, and what I really want to do, and what kind of job I really good at. So I think that's my story. I could say it is really common, like career confusion in youngs, but just try to research the career that aligns with your interest and values and learn as much as you can about them. Talk to people who work in those fields and ask them about their experience, attend career fair and info section. I think the more you learn, the more informed your decision will be. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. And Li, how did you break into the AI/ML space?
Yeah, it's a pretty long story actually. So as I mentioned, it was difficult to find a job as a physicist. So I actually joined an engineering company, and that company was making 3D computer vision products for automotive industry. So one of the problems that I worked on, so that was before I got into like tech, right? So it was more like engineering company. They're trying to figure out the volume of a inside of a piston just by looking at it. So they actually had the technology to do that. So they use something called 3D machine vision and then doing some volumetric calculations. So that's like when I really got interested in that. I didn't have the skills for computer visions back then, but I decided to, hey, this looks really cool. Let's try to figure out how this actually works. And maybe there are better ways to solve the problem. So yeah, I kind of started in the computer vision domain and then kind of worked my way up there, worked on a lot of different systems. Eventually, I ended up in the cloud computing space at AWS. But I guess looking back, this curiosity was always this driving force, I would say, as a physicist, experimentalist to be specific, you kind of want to tinker with things. And then I think tech gives you this opportunity to experiment things. And I kind of just rode along the train, and then that's how I kind of got in. That's 2016, around that time. Yeah, and also I think I can talk a little bit more about since we're here for the students, and I think I do have some tips. I guess looking back on how to sort of get your way in and then stay there, right? Stay at the edge, right? So I guess let me start with how to understand like this AI and ML space in general, right? Because you can't understand everything. That's one of the feelings I got as somebody who wasn't really educated in that domain. And there's so many things, and it was overwhelming. And I believe a lot of you probably share the same feeling right now. What I want to tell you is that you have to understand the basic landscape, right? Understand the most common algorithms, but you don't have to go that very deep. Like say, I want to train an LLM today. I mean, you don't have the data or the money to do that. So sort of take it easy there, right? But you do need to know the common algorithms so you can get through the interviews. I would say that's the number one thing I want to talk about. And then also, don't over-index on one particular skill, like a math skills. You're trying to understand how backpropagation works and that kind of stuff. Maybe you've learned about it, but maybe you're trying to code it yourself. Try to go as wide as you can in the beginning. Just know things at a working level. Don't have to go that deep, I would say. And then lastly, I think one suggestion is that you have to build a portfolio of the projects that you want to showcase to your future employers, right? So one of the things I did back then was to build a travel recommendation app. That was way before, like it was 2017, 2016, right? So this app does something pretty simple. You type a query, say what kind of place I want to go, and then it actually searches through some Wikipedia entries, and then it finds the most similar one to your query and then recommends it. So that's something I built a web app using Flask back in the day, and then you can actually serve it on the internet. So I think that's how I kind of showcase it to the potential employers, and that's how I got my first job. So I think having a portfolio is definitely important. Yeah, so I guess that's my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
All right. And you've worked at companies of varying sizes. Would you like to touch on that as well?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a great question. So I actually worked at like 6 different companies so far. So I guess 4 of them are like tech companies. I would say, like, for time's sake, I would say between a small company and a large company, let's just talk about the differences, right? So I would say, first of all, with a small company, the interview process is quite different. I can tell you that. Like, it's a lot harder to get into large companies. They have like 5-6 rounds of interviews. Small companies, maybe 1-2 interviews and decisions made, right? That's more of a practical side of things. And of course, at a small company, you wear a lot of hats, and then you have to do a lot of things, but not that deeply, right? Because you kind of want to make the business run without going, you can't go too deep. You only have 24 hours in a day. And then the third one is the amount of data. Since we're talking about machine learning, for small companies, it's very difficult to get data from, just from your users, because you don't have a lot of users. But then for big companies, you certainly have a lot of more data. You want to go deeper, but more specific. That kind of ties back into the second point. But because we're talking about data all day these days, so that's something you definitely want to keep in mind. If you find a small company and you can't figure out a way how they're going to gather data, don't join. That would be my suggestion. I've been there, so don't do that. So that would be it.
All right. And Charis, for you, since you're working at Wayfair now, you definitely have some experience on getting to your desired role, especially since you mentioned come from Colombia. You actually did not have this in mind yet. So for you getting, or not just you, but anyone getting into their desired role and succeeding there, what are some of the soft and hard skills that you would say are required?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I think that's a really good question. I consider both soft skill and hard skill, they are kind of like the same level important for your work. But today, I think I want to highlight maybe 3 skills, but I believe there must be more than that. But I just want to highlight that. I think as a new grad, I could say the very first one, definitely the tech skill. We sometimes just refer it as a hard skill. So example like the hard skill, like your computer programming skills, the data analytics skills, your design skills. So I think that really depends on what specific tech role you are in or you want to pursue. So for me, as a senior analyst at Wayfair, programming and analytics skills obtain my daily life. We just conduct kind of like multiple A/B testing, analytics that support our business. So it's really important how we acquire the data, how we analyze the data, and how we translate those data, and how we communicate those data. I think the second one is definitely the communication. Always remember, if you cannot communicate well about your job, that your job means nothing. So utilize your tech skill to perform tasks just the very beginning, but communicating your result with your stakeholders on the business context and help them make business decisions, that's more important one. I think in my role, I could say the data literacy. So data literacy is kind of like the ability to read, write, and communicate data in context. We are acquired to understand the data's resources, analytical methods, and techniques applied. We also acquire to have the ability to describe the use cases and the resulting value. Definitely how to translate your data, communicate those data with some non-technical people. That's also really important. Finally, I want to emphasize the most kind of some important skill is the ability to learn. Always remember, learning is a lifelong journey, not limited to school. You will need to deal with problems that you have never met in school. Try to learn from both success and failures. That I think that benefits a lot. But I believe that those 3 skills is not only 3 skills, like soft and hard skills that require. Just try to learn, always like proactive, keep your mind to learn from whatever the people, learn from your job, learn from what you're doing right now. Yeah, I think that's the 3 skills I want to mention. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for sharing all of that. I guess, for Lee, Charis talked about getting into those roles and those fields, but then in your case, since you've gone deeper into the AIMO space, worked at 6 different companies of varying sizes, how would you advise someone to develop their career in the long run?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, I really echo with what Charis just said about talking to other people and helping other people. I guess I just want to emphasize that a lot of times, during your career development, if you can teach somebody about something, you can understand it better, like an algorithm or some modeling techniques and whatever. So I think that's like, you should just keep that in mind. Be more open. That's the whole point of having GitHub and all those open source software. And I think that's the way the world is going. So that's number 1. Number 2, I would say you try to focus on the business problem instead of the technique. I mean, people probably talk about this a million times, but it's a really easier said than done. A lot of times you want to try the shiniest tool in the world and then see if you can, somehow fit that into the problem you're trying to solve. But that's not the way to go, right? So a lot of times, not every problem can be solved with a hammer. So you try to find the most suitable one. That's why I said you kind of have to understand the entire landscape of machine learning and pick the most useful tool for the problem. For example, right? So I did a project 2 years ago at AWS. They're trying to detect some abnormal traffic patterns, and in the end, without running any machine learning models, we actually just use chi-square testing, which is a very simple statistic-based method to solve the problem. And then it was actually put into production. Now it's being used by like a dozen teams, this method. So that's why I'm saying you have to know more, but not necessarily too deep, right? So that's number 2. I would say number 3 is when you learn something, you have to use work as a medium to learn the necessary skills without, instead of learning something in a vacuum, right? Say if you want to learn a new programming language, you can't just say, hey, I'll buy a book, I start, coding things like on my laptop. Usually I forget about it in 2 months, right? So instead, you can ask yourself, does any of my project require this language? Can I use the language somewhere and then really apply it at work and use it day in, day out? Then you'll remember that. I would say the last one is kind of related to the previous one, which is you want to develop your skills in a T shape, no matter which level or what company you're in, right? So T being you have something going in very deep, but you also expand horizontally to cover as much as possible. But you gotta have this one thing you're very good at, and that's your job security. That's how you sort of build on top of and advance your career on top of that, right? You keep going deeper and deeper, and yeah, that's how I view the problem. And I also want to mention there are a few things you probably don't want to do. This is like some hard lessons. So one of the things is that you probably should start automating things when there's a clear need for it. A lot of times, if you say, I can do something in the Excel sheet like 3 times, right? But what if you have to do it 30 times? What if you have to do it 13 times, right? Do you automate it? Chances are you're probably going to have to do it more to automate things. I wasted a lot of time, especially early on in my career, because I wasn't so comfortable with programming language like in the beginning. So I try to do, hey, if I can click manually, I'll do it. But then you actually spend a lot more time, right? That's the first thing. I think the second thing you want to avoid over time, as you kind of grow more into a career, you want to avoid premature optimization. this is very important. Like a lot of times you want to make your code clean and you want to have all documentation ready, but then you can't move fast. And then by the time you have this entire thing sorted out, there's a problem, like business opportunity has passed, and then there's no value in whatever you're doing. So you certainly want to build something that works first and then go back and optimize it later. You have to go back to optimize later, but don't prematurely optimize your program. So that's, I guess, two things I learned the hard way. That's pretty much it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we all have to learn some hard lessons sometimes, whether we meant to make those decisions or not. But it's a lot of great learning experiences. Of course, we also want to make sure that everyone realizes, it is part of a career. A lot of times these disappointments do help inspire us to work harder or to grow and learn and just, overcome challenges and obstacles. So for you, Li, what's your motivation behind a tech career?
Yeah, it's a really good question. That's a question I asked myself when I decided to quit my job and go do the real tech stuff, right? So I guess back then, more on a personal level, it was really curiosity, as I mentioned. It was driving me, how, do things work and why does this algorithm work versus that one? And then over time, of course, having a physics background definitely helped because I was just naturally curious about a lot of things. I think the longer I work in the tech industry, I think about the societal level. At the societal level, why we're doing technology, right? So I want to mention, with the advent of generative AI these days, a lot of people want to stop the development of AI because they say, hey, it's gonna, stop humanity or take away jobs. And I personally, I think that is super overhyped, and it's not going to happen in like 10 or 20 years. So for me, the motivation is actually I go to work every day trying to enable more developers run their ML applications on AWS so we can advance this thing together, and then we can push the human race to a better place. I guess that's a great feeling, and that's the motivation for me.
Sorry, I was muted to drink some water and then I didn't unmute. But Lee, thank you for sharing all that. It's also, Charis, it's great to hear about all the stuff that you've gone through. Obviously, for everyone, a tech career is a very rewarding pathway in life to pursue if that's what you want. And we hope that the information here has helped you determine more or less what you can do in your own lives, how you can overcome challenges, what can you do in general, but also specifically, when you're getting started, when you're deeper in. We hope that all this helps you out, and anyone who's watching this later, we hope the same thing. And Charis and Li have generously volunteered to leave their LinkedIn profiles, which I will put into the Zoom chat, as well as the YouTube comments or the video description, either one. So everyone is going to be able to connect with them. We hope that you make the most of these relationships. These are people who have succeeded. They want to see you succeed as well. So, definitely take advantage. You'll rewatch the video if necessary. We'll make sure to send this out to everyone and reach out to them and ask them all the information, whatever you're trying to learn from them, do that. And yes, we do have time for a Q&A. I guess if anyone has something they want to ask, go ahead and raise your hand. That way we can at least prioritize who's first, who's second. I'll call out whoever, raise your hand, you can ask questions.
Okay, I didn't find the raise a hand function, so
Yeah, I guess if you can't find it, just type in the chat, say I have a question.
let me try. I think Zoom has function to recognize. Yeah, let's try. Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh, all right, there you go. Yeah, raise your hand physically, and then Zoom.
Okay.
That's AI for you right there.
There you go. Yeah. Brilliant
All right.
execution and demonstration.
Okay. Thank you so much, Charis, Dr. Zhang. This was very nice talk, inspirational because you have been sharing your experiences. So I So you mentioned something about AI and ethics generally. So I was wondering if, since you're working in Amazon, AWS, is Amazon one of the companies, or does Amazon actually take some steps to consider ethics in AI within the company, within AWS, for example? If yes, then what are they? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to kind of separate the work that we do here at Amazon because it's a large company, right? So for AWS, we're trying to enable developers to run their machine learning applications. And that part, I wouldn't say there's too much, sort of ethics because we're really just a platform, right? You just like Twitter, just like all YouTube, you can put stuff. I think it's the sort of machine, like the other side, like we do have the machine learning teams that are making recommendations. For example, you have like the video teams. I think the content related stuff, we're working on reducing the bias. And I think this is definitely, as a matter of fact, I know some personally, I know some teams that are they're trying to come up with new algorithms to sort of reduce the bias. So first you have to measure the bias and then reduce the bias in a lot of the recommendations. Like for example, so one of the things I can talk very concretely is a while ago, we were trying to remove all the sensitive words from all the code bases, just as an example. Because back in the day, you have like blacklist and whitelist. And nowadays, we're not trying to use these words anymore, right? So we'll have to find alternative names. And then just to change that, it's a lot of work because all your code bases are written in black and white. Sometimes they even use masters list and slave list, in computer terms, but nowadays we don't like that anymore. So we actually spend a lot of effort just to remove these sort of non-inclusive terms from our code bases. That tells you how much effort we're actually putting into this thing. And as you can see, we're putting a lot of effort into, especially with Bedrock, the latest enabler for AI technology. We're definitely watching over that space. But what I want to say is this entire journey is really early, compared to a lot of people saying, hey, is AI going to eliminate humanity? Again, this is like, I think, it's not very realistic to think that way. I think the most important thing is trying to reduce biases, especially based on race and gender in your machine learning applications and the recommendations. These things are definitely in the works, and I think they're very relevant with what we do today. So.
David, do you want to ask a question? Thank you so much, Professor. Yeah, I think David raising his hand.
I think someone's muted. So
Yeah,
Scotty,
yeah.
you're muted. Yeah.
Yes, Scotty is also muted.
David, are you muted?
David was not muted, but I guess, David,
Okay.
how about you type your question into the chat if your microphone isn't working?
Yeah, it seems like his microphone isn't working.
I guess while we wait, if anyone else has other questions, feel free to raise your hand. All right, Charis, you have a question?
Actually, I have a question for Li. So
Okay.
I'm not sure they understand in a correct way. So for AWS team, you are kind of like the engineer who build the plan, and the developer is more like the pilot who use the AWS to develop like whatever machine learning model or AI, right? How did you make sure that works? Just want to understand how AWS like work to ensure that HackDuke works for any other.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
great question. That's a great question. So I would say at a highest level, we have something called availability monitoring for my particular service, like Lambda, right? So the way Lambda works using one sentence is that you send a workload to us and we will run it for you. That's why it's called serverless, because you don't have to manage your own servers, right? So if you're talking about that kind of applications, we have received your message and can we process it? If we can't process, we have to return an error, right? So we can monitor that rate is something we call availability, and we have to make sure it's above 99.9999% at all times. So that's the thing we're monitoring, like as we speak, 24/7 around the globe. And the workload you send to are actually located within the nearest data center from your location. So for example, if you're in South Africa, we have a data center in Cape Town, actually. So that thing will be sent to Cape Town. That's why I kind of mentioned if Earth were 10 times larger, we have a bigger problem. But even with the size it is, you still have this kind of delay problem. A lot of times, like you order something on DoorDash, that's actually Lambda function. You add something to the cart to change the price, like it happens instantly, but it's actually behind the scene. It's us working. So that's number one. Number two is we have this concept called AZ redundancy. So for each data center, we actually have 3 or 4 copies of everything. So if one of the machines, our entire data center is destroyed by, say, a fire, or asteroid, whatever, we have 2 others. So we run this redundancy at all times. And funny that I kind of talked about the reducing the waste. You actually need to be very smart about reducing the sort of the number of machines, because you don't need all the redundancy at all times. So when you don't need, you send it back to the pool so you can help some other services. So that's where the science come in, where you can, for us, for example, we run some integer programming to do some optimizations so that you don't have to run all the redundancy at all times. But the goal, again, is for the customers so that everybody can run their workload anytime they want, everywhere they want, and 24/7. So that's sort of at a high level how this thing works.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, thank you. And David typed his question to the chat. I plan to get a job after finishing my master's degree. Should I focus more on machine learning or traditional software development? And I guess this one could be Charis or Li. Either one of you can answer.
I could answer first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that for this question, that really depends on what you are really interested in, and also machine learning and traditional software development. That's kind of like 2 different areas, and also require 2 different might be different programming skills, right? For example, for machine learning, you kind of need some basic for Python, and also you need to have the ability to build the data like ETL and also SQL like that. But for the software development, you might need more, for example, like Java, C++. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
Yeah, to add on to that, I like to say if you want to have a job right away after master's, SDE or traditional software development might be better, because these days I'm not saying you can get a job with a master's degree in machine learning, but they do want to hire PhDs. That's just like the trend of the industry. I can't change that. Nobody can change that. And there are different types of, AI type of jobs. And if you're talking about large companies, if they're developing some new algorithms and like optimization, they want you to have some kind of really years of experience writing these equations, and that's one type of job, right? But then I guess if you want to start with machine learning, so I actually had a coworker who graduated from Dartmouth or some university in the northeast side of the U.S. And she joined the company, and then she decided, hey, I just can't advance in my career doing this machine learning thing. So she went back to Stanford, I think, to take a master's degree in machine learning. But then after that, she got another job in, I don't know, Spotify as a machine learning engineer. But I don't know, like, it's not like, she feels like, hey, I feel like, this, it's still kind of limited, but you can do something like machine learning engineer, but instead of machine learning scientist. So I guess for her, she probably wants to go get a PhD, but I don't know, like that's everyone's career choice. My point is that with ML, you want to go high, and then your options are more like broader. But then if you want to do things fast, go for SDE, and then you can get rich or get a job quickly. But then, yeah, so that's kind of like my take on this.
All right, thanks a lot, everyone. Let's see, do we have any more questions? Okay, David, okay. All right, so we have time for one last question. And, oh, okay, we have iPad Air 4th generation.
You're muted.
I'm sorry. I didn't
Okay.
change my nickname.
No worries.
Yeah. I want to ask that based on the last question, some of the talkers said that if you want to find a position related to machine learning, you'd better get a PhD degree. And I remember I told to my artificial intelligence instructor, we talk about these things, and he said there was kind of overqualified for PhD students to find a job, especially in American. I was confused by what he say and your say. So
Sure.
I'm curious about
Sure.
this
I
question.
can take this on first. I would say, like I said, there are different kinds of machine learning related jobs. So for example, right? So you have, say a company wants to build a recommender system, trying to do some ads, right? Trying to recommend the right product. You probably can get something like machine learning engineer position with a master's degree. That's fine. They probably don't need PhDs to kind of develop like the next level, like computer vision algorithm, like your whatever object detection or some segmentation things. If you do get a PhD, right, and you love research, there's like a lot of job opportunities for you as well. That won't be overqualified. Now, if you have a PhD in one of these fields, right, but then you go to a smaller company, you probably really feel that way. So I guess the thing is, if you go for a master's degree, you can probably start with, machine learning engineer, which is great. Now, because there's also the job called data scientist, right? There's so many different job titles these days. For data scientists, like usually they also want like PhD. The reason is that they need some statistics. So a lot of times you can't really get to know statistics until you have your PhD. A lot of people have like a biostats, like PhD. Actually, matter of fact, a lot of biostats PhDs, they actually found jobs in the tech field, right? Because they know how to run different statistical comparisons and that kind of stuff. If you do like a AI PhD, yeah, then you're probably going to end up at very like big companies, and they're looking for very specific people, like say AMD or Intel or NVIDIA. Yeah, I have a lot of acquaintances that actually work at NVIDIA. They started with a that person I know, she started with a biostats, and then she joined NVIDIA 6 years ago, and then just their stock price just shot up, and she's probably like a millionaire now. But that's my point, right? Because you have a PhD, you won't. It always depends. It's not like you won't find a job, but it does take commitment to do a PhD. So just you kind of have to weigh up pros and cons in that way. It's like 5 years.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, thanks a lot, everyone. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but you can follow or connect with Charis and Li on LinkedIn. I will post that again into the Zoom chat. You actually have another speaker on site now in IB 1046, Dr. Mustafa Mihir. So if you're not in that room, go ahead and go there now. Everyone else, I will keep the Zoom room open so you can connect with Li and Charis on LinkedIn. Like I said, it's in the Zoom chat. And Li and Charis, thank you so much for your time, for your excellent advice, all your insights. If you want to stay on, you're welcome. Otherwise, everyone's welcome to leave the room, especially if you're going to IB 1046 for Dr. Mustafa Mihir's talk. Like I said, I'm going to keep this room open longer just so you can follow up, connect with their LinkedIn in the Zoom chat. But otherwise, thank you for your time, everyone. We hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Congratulations on making it this far through HackDuke Online, the DKU experience. Good luck with judging, and we will have more instructions following up after all that. So have fun. We will see you around.
Thanks.
Thank you.